Hello, welcome. This is my session for the Evidence for Learning conference, which is taking place on the 29th of June 2021. The focus here is going to be on staff wellbeing, and I'm hoping very much that what this will do is give you some very useful practical ideas and tools for looking after yourselves at this current time in this COVID pandemic, which is obviously ongoing. So what's the context for us? Currently, I know that many of us are concerned about the levels of teacher stress, anxiety, which is ongoing and increasing for many in our school communities. The NASUWT union reported in April that approximately 4,700 teachers had reported self-harming during the pandemic, and 1 in 4 had access clinical psychological support. So there is evidence, clear evidence there, and anecdotal evidence, of course, that people are experiencing heightened levels of stress, trauma, anxiety, and vicarious trauma. And this is tending to lead to a higher level of burnout, particularly amongst teachers and those supporting children in schools. Our workforce, I think, is under extreme pressure, trying to navigate all the different changes and trying essentially to keep staff and students, young people, safe. And given the increase in the Delta variant currently, there's clearly something very, very worrying for all of us to consider going forwards into next term. We know that many more of our children, staff are contracting the new Delta variant. So this is something that is not going to just simply go away due to the fact that we're getting an increase in the number of vaccinations. We're going to have to be far more vigilant now. And I think from my perspective, there is a real need to ensure more than ever that people feel safe and nurtured, because if we're going to survive this, if we're going to then engage in what I call post-traumatic growth, we need to make sure right at this moment in time and going forwards that we've got the right systems in place to nurture our own well-being. So self-care, very often this is presented as the so-called cheesy option, which I find really a tricky concept, because from my perspective as a psychologist, this is an essential if you're going to be able to regulate those that you work with and that you support. Mental health's got to be our essential focus now if we're going to keep and maintain a healthy, productive and regulated workforce in our schools, because it's intrinsically linked to looking after yourself and putting your team first. And this is a key message for any senior management or leadership teams out there. We need to put our staff, our workforce first. I'm going to essentially share with you today my Find Your Calm plan. I'm a great believer in the fact that if you are self-regulated yourself, if you've found your own calm, then you're in a much better place in order to be able to share it with children, young people. Those adults who are dysregulated or really stressed and anxious and hyper aroused themselves are not going to be able to share calm with children, young people, and help dysregulated children to regulate too. This is an impossibility. So very important that we calm ourselves, know how to do this, and find that calm on a daily basis. So initially, I want to focus on what you can control to reduce your anxiety. And we know that there are many things in terms of looking after our self-care plan, focusing on the things that we can actually manage, you know, the way in which we interact with others, or the way we think about things, our emotional responses, the focus on the stuff that essentially practically day to day we can do to keep ourselves and others safe, the social distancing, building the right kinds of connections for support, etc. A sense of autonomy, of feeling just that little bit more in control, can help to reduce anxiety. We know this from the research literature. And I also think, again, from positive psychology, this might sound slightly cheesy, but I do this with the children and young people I work with. At the end of each day, rather than focusing just before you go to sleep on all the worries and concerns of things that went wrong, what you're worried about tomorrow, it's vital that we end the day thinking about 3 things maybe that just were good, just that little bit better, that made us feel a bit more positive, that a kind moment, a kind act that someone else performed or we performed ourselves. So reinforcing that and revisiting them at the start of the next day. And it's important to neutralize negative thoughts. That's not as simple as changing a negative to a positive. That's not right. But it's about challenging things that are ineffective, that are not really helpful for us, that aren't really true. I think it's important. We catastrophize when we're anxious. We blow things out of proportion. It's part of being a human being. But it's really important. Our thoughts are not always facts. They're not always true. We need to challenge them. We need to learn how to engage in cognitive restructuring on a regular basis. I also think we need to think about how we develop and maintain a self-care plan. And like any plan that fosters well-being, mental, physical, emotional health, we've got to think about writing it down. When you see it, it's concrete, it's there, the evidence is there in front of you. These are the things I'm going to do. This is when I'm going to do them. This is who's going to help me. This is who I'm going to do it with, etc. It's not selfish, this stuff. We cannot pour from an empty vessel. Can't say this enough. So putting yourself first is key here. And I think that's essential. I know from personal professional experience that we can't regulate others if we're unregulated, dysregulated. So just factoring in that time for ourselves is an essential. So whenever you do this, just think it's not a selfish act. It's actually a kind unselfish act, because you're making sure that you're fit for purpose, that you've then got the energy to support others. And a simple tool strategy is essential. When we're anxious, our breathing gets very shallow. We breathe from higher up in our chest rather than from the diaphragm. We've got to really just stop, take those deep breaths immediately. There will be a calming effect. Again, it's such a simple strategy, but we forget to do it sometimes. Put your hand on your heart, just pause, just stop. We get kids to do it, let's do it ourselves. Also understanding that it's normal to feel anxious when we're in uncertain times. Give yourselves a bit of slack here. Don't punish yourselves for getting overwhelmed. Just allow that, and then just give yourself that time and space to calm down. It's going to pass. That's important. Remember to remain hopeful. And regulating regularly throughout the day, punctuating your day with grounding, breathing, mindfulness, whatever it is, exercise, whatever increases those feel-good endorphins, those chemicals in your brain, is an essential. You'll know what works for you, and it's really important to develop your own personalized toolbox here for well-being. Absolutely essential. Soothing your own nervous system, even if that means drinking 5 more gallons of water, not a gallon, sorry, 5 more glasses of water during a day. Really, really important, because that does also help to regulate. And co-regulating with your child, again, very, very important, showing them how to do it. Mirror me, copy my breathing, let's visualize this together. You can't do that unless you know this stuff, unless you're actually practicing it yourself. Otherwise, it's not authentic. And this helps. Accepting yourself in the moment too, having some self-compassion. You can't always get it right. Let's be a bit kinder to ourselves. Okay, we had a really bad day today. We blew it. You know, we got stressed, we got anxious, we were a bit rude with the kids, a bit anxious around them. We weren't up to our best. That's fine. Okay, forgive yourselves for that and start again. Learning from what went wrong is an essential if you want to keep your head right. Being solution focused rather than focusing on the problems all the time. Really, really important. What did go well? What was just a bit better? What worked? What was that little golden nugget that day that just made that little bit of difference, even if it was a simple interaction? Moderating and managing our self-care plans is also an essential. We need to be able to adapt and be flexible in the moment. We know that finding our calm on a daily benefit is only going to benefit us and those we love. The 3 C's here are crucial. We've got a challenge in keeping ourselves well. It's hard work. We need to be vigilant and plan it, timetable it in. But we also need to be committed to the community we are in, keeping each other well, not shaming those who find it harder. And connections are vital in this process. Supportive, mutually supportive relationships, compassionate relationships, nurturing relationships needs to be the focus. It underpins everything we do in a wellbeing curriculum and in creating that kind of ethos in a school. So thinking about how you nurture your empathic brain is going to be very important going forwards. Remember, you can only teach, parent, or support when you're regulated. A key message from this presentation. So what are you doing in these 4 segments of this diagram here? Physically, your self-care routines intellectually, challenging your negative thinking, focusing on what you can control. Support in terms of practical supports, feeling understood and accepted, building those connections and being in touch emotionally with your feelings, being able to talk about them. It's not cheesy, it's not self-centered, it's an absolute essential if we're going to maintain our well-being. Keeping others well at a whole school level is therefore the key here. And this kindness, this sharing, this community spirit, this ethos of connection and well-being, giving each other a sense of feeling safe in those relationships so that we can create the calm atmosphere we need, which enables us in turn to self-regulate more effectively, feeling more in control, feeling connected. Ultimately, this will all provide more of a sense of hope that we can navigate our way through this, that we will be able to come out at the other end. Things may be different, but there are lots and lots of stuff that we can do, just in practical terms, to ensure that this really happens and we can create that caring ethos. We focus on what we can control. We retell the stories of our strengths. It's essential, because otherwise we'll just slip too easily into the negative mode. That community connection in which we create these collective self-care spaces. I'm really keen on this notion that, 10 to 20 minutes, 10 minutes a day, the team meetings, whatever we do, first briefing in the morning, that we collectively come together and focus on the good, sharing skills, strengths, ideas, things that work, how we're looking after ourselves, not forcing people to go to yoga on Thursday after school because this is a collective self-care strategy. It doesn't work for everyone. Let's embed these collective processes in the systems on a daily basis. So I call it going with grit, going with bravery, and we need to really think about this. Staff wellbeing has to be a priority. Let's put the right screening wellbeing systems in place so there's an effective continuum of support, both for the children and for the adults. Some of our kids are going to need bespoke interventions. Some of us, as the grown-ups, will need more support. If you are one of those people, if you feel you're in that place, then please go and get it. It's an absolute essential. Prevention is better than cure. The sooner that we recognise we're struggling and we ask for help, the sooner we can begin the healing process. So very, very important. Training of key staff members to take the lead in this area is vital. So get the right resources, get the right support. We've developed flexible blending learning options over this last 18 months. And for some of our kids, this has worked beautifully. And for some of us, the flexibility has really worked well too. So we need to think about that. Maybe this is a really positive, good opportunity to go forward and be more creative about how we include our children, those with special needs, those with more vulnerabilities. I think it's really a real opportunity for us to do that at this current time. We can only do it, however, if we focus on nurture, safety, compassion, and recovery first. So I think we need to kind of shift this narrative, moving away from academic catch-up and moving more to what I call this notion that we can survive if we create the emotionally appropriate context, which is trauma informed for our children, young people, and the adults. I also think let's shift the narrative away from this notion that pathologizes all of us, our children and us. We are resilient. We've shown it over this last year. We're compassionate, flexible, adaptable. We are not the lost generation or the lost workforce who are always going to be damaged. Some of us at the top end of the continuum who had pre-existing mental health difficulties will find this more difficult going forwards, obviously. But many of us have this level of resilience and we've shown it. And I think it's important that we shift the narrative now and move to more of a hopeful sense that in the future we will be able to move forward and maintain a level of well-being that ensures that all of us can thrive. So thank you very much for listening.